Hello, Motorada World fans, and welcome to this episode of Talking MotoGP Thailand. And welcome to all of our fans from our Facebook platform, our YouTube channel. And some good news is I spent 10 minutes yesterday and I finally got a podcast account on Spotify. So keep a lookout for the link. It'll be audio only because we've had a lot of requests from people saying, Rob, I want to listen to this while I drive in my car or on the train or going wherever. Please, can you make a voice podcast version? So I'll do that, and I'll put the link up probably tomorrow. I've already put up the Phillip Island one as a test run, and I'll put up our Thailand race review up tomorrow on Spotify. So MotoRider World and Talking MotoGP is officially on Spotify as a podcast. Hello, El Camino. Hello, Wayne Taylor, Gordon De Beer, Paolo Chiachetti. I hope I say that right, Paolo. Paolo came in with some really useful information last time, so I'm hoping he can give us some inside little bits there once again. Andre Feldman, Damien Muir, Michael Volo-Lesles, Nicole Briet, Estienne van der Berg, Justin DP, Brian Ritchie. So we've got listeners tuning in from all over the world, including Andre Veltman, all the way from Epping Forest, UK. Good man. Yes, of course, super proud of South Africa, the rugby. We'll start off there by giving a big round of applause to the Bokke Paul. Obviously, I'm over in the UK, but pandemonium there in South Africa. It's always a great feeling, even me being a proud South African, although living in the UK, it just uplifts the whole nation for whatever, a month, a couple of months before we get kicked in the face again with load shedding and everything else. But the Bokke really just do have that spirit of just uplifting a nation, and they've done it once again.
Yeah, good evening to everyone, and hi Rob, how's it going? Yeah, what a special occasion it really is. I think it was Nelson Mandela said, sport has the power to unite people. And let's face it, we live in a very diverse country, lots of problems, lots of social injustices. Doesn't matter which side of the fence you sit on, they are there. And a weekend like we've just had, in fact, 3-4 weekends like we've just had regarding the rugby, really unites this country. The problem is the hangover only lasts for a week or two, and then we go back to normal where, everyone's fighting with everyone, and the pressures. You've lived here, the load shedding. Now we've got water issues. Then the, petrol price. It's just issue upon issue. But at least for, this time period, and maybe, as I say, 2 or 3 weeks going forward, everyone forgets about that. And it actually shows us what a magnificent country we live in, and what a magnificent people the South Africans are. Everyone, regardless, was jumping up and down, shouting and screaming, and all issues were forgotten. And sometimes we need to maybe just try and live our lives a little bit more like that. Easier said than done. I understand there's pressures, there's all other dramas, but certainly a fantastic weekend, great result, regardless of whether you think the ref was right or wrong. It was a tough game and we came out on top. So credit and well done to those guys. Excellent.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Look, I don't follow rugby. I don't really know. I know but the basics of rugby, but I don't support the Boks from a rugby fan point of view. I support them for the message that they are. No matter your color, if you're pink, black, white, purple, green, you're in that team on merit. The best players go out there and get the job done. And yeah, everything they stand for during, after the World Cup is what I follow. So yeah, well done to the boys. Really, really proud moment there.
And that certainly comes through in that team. You can see that everyone is there because they believe they're there on merit, and it shines through without a shadow of a doubt.
That's what we like to see. Right, now we're going to talk about the actual greatest sport on the entire planet, motorcycle racing, and of course MotoGP. Just tuning into everyone here. A lot of people saying hello, Rob and Paul, Dave McBain, Brendan Kreiling, Estienne van der Berg, Van Erasmus, Roy Miller, Beverly Orendahl, Hugo van die Kerk, UK Upper Kempton. Stephen Berry's joining us. Hey, Stephen. Hope you're well. Thank goodness you're in the sides there to keep up all the comments on the side. Remember, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, just hit that like button, hit the share button. Let's get the Talking MotoGP message as far out there as we possibly can. Potential talking point is KTM facing a Honda Marquez situation. Currently, only one guy that can ride the bike at the moment, it seems. Can't see how Brad is getting any help data-wise. That is from Wayne Taylor. That was a, I don't know if... I follow the Jack Miller fan group on Facebook, and some person, I could use more Jake Dixon type words, but some person put up there that the Brad's preferential treatment in KTM is getting very obvious, and a lot of people then based him for that. So that's one of many talking points that we're going to go through. I think the best way to start, because you don't know where to start from this weekend, it was so fantastic. But let's just start with the main race results and go through each rider as they finish, and we can just touch upon the whole race weekend, the sprint race and the main race as we go through the names. Of course, the man on top, Paul and everyone, Jorge Martin, and it's been a testing, trying couple of weeks for Jorge Martin. We've spoken about it. We don't have to go into depth about it. Making the wrong tire choice, whether it was him on his team. But anyway, they got it wrong. They had the championship firmly in their grasps for all of 12 hours in Indonesia, and then he crashed, threw it all away, and we all know what happened in Phillip Island as well. So it needed a reset, and we said that last week. It needed a reset back to basics, back to Jorge Martin is the fastest kid on the planet. Trust him, go out and do your thing. And that's exactly what he went out and did this weekend. He dominated from the first practice session. He pole positioned, sprint race win, and the main race win. The sprint race win was under control. It's never easy at that pace and being out front, but he controlled it, managed it as we expected. That's 5 in a row now in the sprint race. Good, well done, brilliant. But that main race win, where medium front, hard rear, the same as everyone else, and I still loved his comment on the golf cart after the sprint race. Now, for Sunday, I'm going with whatever the other guys are going with. And he just proved what an amazing talent the kid is. As soon as Brad put the pressure on and he got in front, I thought, we haven't really seen much of Martin in this kind of situation. He's very Lorenzo-like, likes to get out front, manage the race by himself. We've seen him in 1 or 2 battles, yes, but certainly not in this kind of pressure environment of the championship is up for grabs. And with everything surrounding him, losing the championship lead, the pressures of the championship and everything, to go do what he did and ride the way he did in that Sunday Grand Prix race was phenomenal. He was absolutely brilliant.
Rob, I don't know if you got the email. I certainly didn't, but no teams have been asking for me to go run their team and be the manager. But what we've been saying for the last few weeks, stop being different. You're trying to win the championship. You have no need to doubt yourself by running a soft tire when everyone's on a medium or hard. And he even said, we're doing what everyone else is doing. So clearly someone in the team listened to you and I a week ago and said, listen, maybe we must listen to the boys from South Africa. Their Boyke running in second, minus the green paint, knows what he's doing, so maybe we do. I joke there, but seriously, it's the first time we've seen him in the main race, seen him under big pressure. Like you say, he likes to get ahead in the sprint race, pulls his 3-second gap, and then he certainly manages it. In the main race, he was under pressure, and I think we saw, I'm going to say, the best of George Martin. He didn't buckle. He fought back immediately. I thought once Brad got to the front, that was going to be, I thought he'd get a 6 or 8 tenths of a second, 10 bike length lead, and that would be it. Martin was on his A plus game, and he's just showed that this championship's definitely not done and dusted. And it was actually, I know a lot of comments on social media saying, was this the best race of the year? Well, I'm going to say without a doubt it was. Phillip Island was great, but this just turned out, and it was only 3 of them racing, but wow, what a day it was. But all credit to Martin and Pramac Ducati, who have now, I think, changed gears once again. We saw it, then he crashed, and then they seemed to lose a bit of focus. I think they've now changed gears and said, okay, what does it take for us to win this championship? Not let's be smart and do it our way. The wheel's been invented. Just roll it now. And I think with what he said on the golf cart, that message has clicked into gear, and the last 3 races are going to be something very special because Pecco's riding like an absolute star. Brad's in the mix. Martin's trying to win a championship, but he's still behind due to his own mistakes. So, I think it's going to be everything to play for, and it's going to be really competitive racing going for the last 3 rounds.
Sticky Wiggy comments, George Martin. So Sticky, when you're in South Africa, we know it's Jorge, but when you're from South Africa, you say George. It's just spelled with a J, George. So we call him George Martin, just like it was George Lorenzo. Stephen Berry says Thailand, Jerez, and Phillip Island are his top 3 races from this year. I agree with him fully on that. I mean, it was there for everyone to see how impressive Jorge Martin was. But what impressed me, what makes him so special is he's so hard to pass. And even when he takes those defensive lines, he doesn't run wide. He's able to keep his corner speed, and he still comes out of the turn fast. When on that, coming out of that last little chicane, Brad had the drive on him. Jorge closed the inside line. Brad forced Brad around the outside. Then I thought, right, the cutback's on you. We saw Mark Marquez do it to Fabio. That's what happens in that final turn, the cutback. I thought, right, Brad, it's cutting back. This is perfect. Martin, you're never going to be able to. You've halved the racetrack. There's no way you're going to be able to carry that much corner speed and still make the turn. Yet here he does. He kind of just floats that bike, scrubs off speed like a motocross rider in a berm, and then gets it turned on the gas, and he gets to the line. I think Brad and Pecco were sitting there going, well, how is this possible? This guy breaks so late, halves the track. He's got half the track to play with now. A typical racing instructor will tell you, you can't do that. You've got to, curb to curb. You've got to go far left to be able to make it right. And Martin closes the line. Another thing he does very well, and it's very clever, is he throws that leg out so wide. And what that does is, it's a natural reaction. People say it helps turn the bikes. There's so many ways you can look at it. But what it does is, and I've seen it in real life behind some guys that stick their leg out. But I think one question that I'm going to certainly ask Brad when we chat to him later in the year is, does that put the guy off going on the inside? When you want to shove it on the inside of Martin, that leg flying as far to the right as possible surely does make the track look a lot and narrower. And then you think, oh, well, geez. And you could see Brad was like, well, which way do I go? I want to go inside, but he's not letting me there. He's closed that line, and he's got this leg dangling out. So let me go left and try this cutback, and it just never worked. And Martin is the king at this fast defensive line. He's created this fast way to defend. And even in Phillip Island, when they caught him with a tire problem, I still thought, no, this guy knows how to defend. Listen, you can't defend when you've got no tire left. But Martin, with everything that was on the line, him and Pecco didn't have to do what they were doing there. Brad had nothing to lose. Brad's got nothing to lose anymore. So he could quite easily stick it out and running on the paint. Oh, well, Brad's got nothing to lose anymore. Brad just wants to go win races. But Pecco and Martin are thinking championship, thinking bigger picture, so much pressure, everything that's happened. And for them to go put on that race that they did there, I mean, I was speechless. I bliksemed off my couch about 40 times, just not knowing what to do.
Well, you're watching arguably the three top riders in the world at the moment. And to see them put on a show like that, I mean, take nothing away from Bagnaia. He came from the furthest back. Brad and Martin were gone at the beginning of the race. He came from, what was he, seventh at one point. He even said he had to fight with Aleix. He had to fight with Mark. Mark ran him wide a couple of times. Fair and square, but, Mark was in the race as much as he was. Then Alex Marquez. So he certainly picked his game up for the race, which we've discussed. The last 3 weekends we've seen him not great on Friday, sometimes not getting through Q1 straight into Q2. Hasn't phased him. He's had a fairly good run in the sprint race. Also not too concerned. Yeah, obviously it worries him, but he doesn't let it get to him. But then come race day, he brings his A game. He's on it immediately. And I've seen it now. I think it's 3 races in a row where his starts have not been good. He's come from 7th, 8th. I mean, let's not go back to China. Japan, where he was 13th on the grid, comes through and wins the race. The other races, he's just settled into a pace that's quicker than the guys in front of him until he gets to the front guys. And then he seems to be able to have enough left to be able to challenge them for the balance of the race. So all credit to him. I think he's really, and we've discussed it, I really think he's a very worthy world champion. For those who ever doubted in him, and I'm not saying anyone did, but I'm just saying he's shown in every aspect that he deserved his world championship, and he's putting up a hell of a fight to make sure he retains it this year. Whether he does or not, I think we're only going to find out when the checkered flag falls at Valencia at the end of the year.
Before we move on further down and get to Brad, who, as you said, crossed the line in second. We all know he went onto the green plate in support of the box and then got demoted to third place. But there was a big talking point coming out of the race that, Aleix Espargaro, we'll talk about him later. He got penalized for this. But Willem Kruger and Steve Engelbrecht talk about it here. Willem Kruger says tire pressure is a big talking point. Believe Martin is on a warning now. Steve Engelbrecht says, how old did Pramac pull a Rassi and play the hole in the tire pressure rule perfectly? When does Pecco play his free cheat card? Now, the tire pressure rule was introduced. So basically, riders have to run or can't run more than 50% at that agreed tire pressure. So now, out of the Thailand race weekend, it was Marc Marquez, Paul Espargaro, and Jorge Martin and Aleix Espargaro that got hit for running more than 50% of the race under the legal or the required tire pressure. Now, at MotoGP level, we've spoken about it a couple of times. It's about increments. It's about the small things. Every small millimeter, centimeter, inch, bar, PSI, whatever makes a huge difference. So obviously MotoGP and the Michelin tires, they're very temperamental when it comes to tire pressure. And riders have mentioned that before. I've heard it in the paddock. Riders have talked about it more, especially the front tire spiking when you're in the group and it overheats and it goes up. It really becomes a little bit more unrideable, get more chatter, less feel. Anyway, so if you set that tire pressure to run, slightly lower tire pressure, getting more contact patch, more tire on the ground, better feeling, more grip. And that's what seems to be happening here. So a couple of riders, Maverick Vinales was the first back in Catalonia. He was the first to get slapped in the wrist. So how it works now is you get one warning, and then second time around you get a penalty, which happened to Aleix Espargaro. Now he got a 3-second penalty. He was demoted from 5th down to 8th or whatever. Pressure's on, excuse the pun, pressure's on Jorge Martin now because, as Steve says, I don't know, I don't know if the teams know exactly how to play that rule. If they did use their joker card for this round and say, you know what, it's really hot out there, let's run this thing on a knife edge and let's take this warning. Let's take the warning because you must know it's going to come. They monitored. You can't get away with it. There's no ways you can cheat the system. And knowing that you've got that one warning, I wonder if, as Steve says, as Pramac went, you know what, this is going to be a tough race. Brad Binder's probably going to be in the mix. There's probably going to be front tire overheating. Let's play this card now, and it could have worked. Had they not played it, and had he been on 0.1 higher of a tire pressure or whatever it is, would he have had the same feeling? Would he, it's the difference between staying on and crashing, and there's so many parameters to look at here. So I don't know how to look at this tire pressure rule thing from Dorna, because you get a warning and then you get a penalty. Cheating's cheating. If the tire pressure is that's the tire pressure. There shouldn't be a warning. It should be that's the tire pressure. If you're under that tire pressure for the rules is 50%, it's a penalty. I don't know if I'm game for this slap on the wrist first and then a penalty, because it gives the teams in this situation the chance to play this tire pressure joker card.
So there are two ways of looking at it. Then everybody has one get out of jail free card. So everybody's got this, you're on the same level. Me personally, I think Dorna, and whether it's because of Michelin or with Michelin or whoever it is, they're creating too many rules. We're going to become like, and I know you said you don't follow rugby. People are always moaning at the ref in rugby. The poor guy has to study a book that's 3 times the size of the biggest book in the world and try to memorize all of that in live stuff while it's happening. It's impossible. And I think the rules in MotoGP are starting to go the wrong way. It's getting too policed. And I understand if Michelin come back and say, listen, guys, that's the reason why, and it's a safety issue. Like we saw a few years ago at Phillip Island, where tires were just getting destroyed, and that's many, probably might even have been World Superbikes, where they halved the races and said, that was MotoGP. Anyway, I think what they must do is maybe cut back on all the rules. Does the rider get a notice on his dashboard that his temperature's gone up too much, or is it purely on feel? Because we see when they get told to change to mapping, whatever it is, or when they've got a long lap penalty. But then we didn't see a thing on TV saying, Aleix, please be careful. You're on the limit of the tire. So I don't know. If there's no warning to the rider, then I think it's very unfair, because there's absolutely no way he can know that yes, they know they're on the limit, but they're on the limit with everything. So I don't know, Rob, it's a very difficult one. I hope the rules aren't going to get so cumbersome that we're going to see a world championship won or lost on a rule as opposed to on the racetrack. And that would be my concern. I understand your point is very valid. Cheating is cheating, but they've given everybody the same get out of jail once card. So whether Pramac played it on purpose this weekend could come back and bite them, but maybe they're saying the next 3 tracks, there's not going to be a heat of the tarmac temperature issue. So they can play the card, because it's not going to, no one else can use it again, or it'll be less effective possibly. I don't know. But I just think we might see, and maybe not this year, I hope definitely not this year, we're going to soon enough see a championship that's won according to the rule book instead of on the racetrack. And that's my concern. We seem to be heading that way.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You talk about it, and that's you mentioned the rugby thing, and we're not going to go on about rugby, obviously, but that is why I can't follow a sport like rugby, because there's no rhythm. It's and I think, but hang on, you try to block the pass, and then there's just no flow, and that's exactly what you're saying. You don't want this, and why Phillip Island was so good, and this race was so good, is there was no real interference from race stewards. There didn't have to be, because there was no silliness. Okay, Brad's running on the green, but that was there. We can't have a complaint. Brad can't complain. Brad doesn't complain. That was as clear as you can get. But there was no interference. It was the best rider can go out and win. And like you said, if it comes down to Valencia and Martin crosses the line first and he wins the world championship by 3 points over Pecco, and then literally 20, 30 minutes later, after they've celebrated, done everything, Michelin go, oh, geez, hang on, by the way, 3-second penalty because your tire pressure was there. And that could be for whatever reason, So I agree with you. They are throwing too many things into the mix now for teams to manipulate, for teams to have to abide by. There's just too much going on. And it's the same with the painting, extending the track limits. You open up a whole new can of worms. Phillip Island worked because it's grass, so the riders don't go there. The riders will not go there because they know that is the limit. There's no more. Now, but doing these kind of things and warnings, and it's just, you give a rider an inch, they're going to take a mile. That is what happens.
Yeah, that's exactly how life works. And at that level where you are fighting for every little advantage you can get, of course that's going to happen. Whether or not, and I'm not too familiar with this tire story, because I know exactly how it works. You transgress the rules, you get a warning, then a penalty. But is it a safety issue? Is it, all the bikes are different. So I could understand if they said, okay, all the Ducatis, which I think I'm speaking, as we're thinking now, and it's a little bit impractical. But if they said, okay, all the Dukes, you can run 1.2 to 1.4 is your temperature range. The Aprilia or the Honda or the Yamaha is harder on the front tire, so it's going to generate a little bit more heat under braking. You can run 1.2 to 1.45. I don't know if that would work. Is it a safety issue, or is it just a regulation to stop teams riding on the limit of what's safe and what's not safe? I don't know. I'm not sure what their thinking is behind it. I don't know if you know more about it.
I don't. That'll be a question to throw at Simon Crayford at the end of the year when we chat to him. I do think it's a safety. I'll probably scroll down the comments here under Stephen Berry, or someone will pop up, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure it is a safety thing, because if you're in those tire pressures too low, could delaminate, and at those speeds. And so I think it's Michelin covering their arse, saying our tire works the best at this tire pressure or within this range, so stick to that. So I think it's more Michelin just setting the parameters of, right, that's where our tire works the best, and don't kind of stray for that. But anyway, this is another talking point that's been brought up, the tire pressure thing. It hasn't really come to play. We've seen 1 or 2 warnings given, but this was the first penalty handed out for tire pressure infringement. So now it becomes this, whoa, okay, geez, this thing's real, and it can catch you out. So we're gonna have to watch that very closely. A comment here from Natalie Mayring: I saw Martin and Pecco and their legs and wonder why Brad doesn't do it. And then Daryl or someone else says, yeah, Brad doesn't move around on the bike a lot. So anyway, Natalie, Brad's never had the leg out style. Brad's style reminds me of like a Wayne Rainey old Grand Prix 500 style mixed with a modern day rider. He's never done the leg out. Now and then at some tracks you'll see Brad throw out a left leg when he's flicking from right to a hard left, like Assen when you come out of those long rights into a left. The leg, sometimes comes out. It's a reaction, and he just wants to flick the bike in left. So they say the leg dangling helps to turn the bike or whatever. So some riders do it, some don't, but I think 99% of the riders do, and Brad's and Darren actually are one of the few that don't do it. Daryl says the leg extension should not be considered part of the bike sticking out so far. The rider behind should be able to smack it with their bike when they go through on the inside. Well, we saw in World Superbikes, Loris Baz.
Yeah, exactly.
Alex Lowe's leg. Look, I mean, remember the Kosterman back a couple of years ago when the wings came out, and then, oh no, it's not safe. The wings can't protrude this much, and then, geez, if the Oak's throwing his leg out, what's really any different? Because So if Brad goes and now rides through Jorge Martin's leg, what happens? Is it Brad's fault? Is it Martin's fault? How do you? It's kind of a little bit of a gray area. Look, I think it's part of racing now. Since Rossi did it, it's part of racing. Young kids grow up doing it now. You see it short circuits where you don't have to do it. Kids just do it. Test riders in magazines and that just do it now because they think you have to and it looks cool. I personally still don't do it, but again, it's a gray area. What happens if you do slice through the oak's leg? Well, your leg was there. I was trying to pass you. What must I do?
Also, you mentioned the wings. The wings are a fixture. You can't move them in and out. It's not like the wheels under an aeroplane that, or the ride height device that you can adjust them. The wings are fixed. The leg is not fixed. So if you choose to throw your leg out when Brad is coming past you and he happens to cause you some serious damage, I would say that it's your problem, not Brad's problem, because there's probably a rule somewhere going back to 1946 when MotoGP started that says you and the bike must be one. Now, dangling your leg off, I could be wrong. I'm just surmising that, but I would think that there must be a point where that is it's almost like Romano Fenati taking his hand off and pulling someone's brake. He got penalized for that. Yes, he tried to pull the Oak's brake, but he wasn't in control of the bike. I mean, they penalized the Moto3 riders for tucking down and holding the front fork to try to get more aero. Is that any more dangerous or less dangerous than dangling your leg? So I certainly think it would be the rider dangling his leg, regardless of, he's only ever going to get hit from behind if someone's overtaking. But surely it would be his issue. I don't know. That would be my point. Like you say, everyone's doing it, but because everyone's doing it doesn't make it, I'm going to say, right. We're not talking about what it does to your riding. We're talking about, does it affect Brad Binder trying to overtake Jorge Martin because he's dangling his leg and now he's creating an extra 3/4 of a meter of space that Brad can't invade to make the inside pass. Great area once again, Rob?
It is. Let's move on to Brad. Let's get talking about him. Just to quickly squash this conversation, Stephen Berry says that I don't think it was deliberate. Reckon it was because he was out front in most of the race. What could be a tactic is to run low but sit on second, so pressure goes up half the race, then overtake and push. And Stephen, I understand. You say I don't think it's deliberate, but when 90% of the field are right, and there's 4 riders in that race that got it wrong, I think there is. I think they're so clued up in that MotoGP paddock now. They can set that tire pressure, and they're so clued up with the fuel and the maths of it all that they go, right, you're going to need a softer tire pressure at this point of the race, and this is how we have to do it. I'm not saying it is, but I do think it was deliberate, to be honest. I know what you're saying, Stephen, but I do think it was. Let's talk about Brad Binder. Ollie Motor says, Binder is too nice. Little Big Media Company says, too much chummies in the paddock these days, not enough FU passes. In the past, riders in a title fight would be worried about the guy with nothing to lose, but these two know Brad's too nice. Brad's a hard rider, and he throws it in, and he's not afraid to get his elbows out. Having said that, we have touched upon it, Paul, the last couple of races, certainly going into turn 1 and other areas that Brad has looked a little bit nice. Then as soon as we said that, Indonesia came up and he nearly severed Oliveira's leg and took the whole right side of his body out. The Maridi incident was, a racing incident, tank slapper, no brakes, and hit him. So there's this double-edged sword of being too nice and then being you're not aggressive enough. And I watched Brad, and his passes were brilliant. He had that one right-hander nailed where he just got great drive, could get it across, get it on the inside, but they are breaking, again, the fine margins. And Brad runs a centimeter wide and Martin's back on the inside, and Brad put a couple of good moves on because his main race start on Sunday actually wasn't brilliant. He was down in 5th or 6th and had to get past. He had Alex Marquez. Whenever Alex Marquez or a Marquez is behind, I stress myself. But he made the pass on Aleix because you could see he was like, I've got to get to the front.
Yeah.
In those final stages, Martin passed him on the inside and he tried to lean on him. There were 1 or 2, and this is couch talk again. It's very easy from the outside to say he wasn't aggressive enough and he should have gone. But certainly into that last corner, I know Martin blocked the line, and I think Brad, Brad's plan was to do the cutback, go left. But should he have just gone on the inside, hit that back brake, stop that bike, and well, if I go, Marini's coming with me, and then Pecco, is the biggest winner. But again, this is the other thing. There's so much to think about, right? If I make this move, I'm going to potentially run wide and go onto the green coming out of the final turn, or I'm going to make contact and the race stewards are going to give me a pit. You know what I mean? So it's not just the case of we chommies and I'm not going to do it to my chommy. You can't just do these moves anymore because there's a spotlight on you, and I'm pretty sure that it goes through their minds that, okay, I can't just do this anymore. The consequence of me doing this is this. He probably knew he already touched the green paint. He must have known. And I still think Pecco looked at that and went, you know what? I'm not going to get past a Brad and a Martin. I'm not going to do anything stupid. I've got second. Brad's going to get penalized. I don't think he's come out and said, but that's what I think. But I did look at watching the replays again and again. I went, Brad, you should have just gone, man. Why didn't you just go? But then you go through the thought process of it all and you go, what's going through his mind? Well, all that's happening at 3 million k's an hour, carbon brakes fully jammed, tires old and used. He's trying to make these decisions in that moment. So it's very hard to kind of say you weren't aggressive enough or you were too aggressive enough these days, to me.
To me, this race, he certainly was back to the Brad of not maybe his full-on attack mode that second season in Moto2, but he was certainly, I thought he made some very aggressive yet fair passes. And it's a very fine line. It's easy to make an aggressive pass, shoulder barge someone, you both run wide, the guy behind scoops 2 places. It's quite easy to do that. Brad made clinical passes. He had a couple of tries. He saw where he was fast. I mean, that one corner where he was making passes, the commentator said they're running fourth gear, 220 k's an hour. Now, you get it wrong there. There's big consequences, whether it's for you or somebody else. I'm sure all of them have that in the back of their mind. I thought Brad's overtaking and the way he rode, specifically the main race on Sunday, he was clinical. I don't believe he could have done anything more. Be more aggressive? I don't believe so. The point I also think is important to understand here is what bike's he on? He wasn't on the Ducati. He's on a KTM. You and I have discussed it. I would like his input, which you'll get at some point. I can tell you now, he'll tell you he was riding at 110%.
Oh, yeah.
We looked and said, no, Brad's riding like a champion because he's racing the 2 best in the championship on the best bike. He's not on the best bike. And I think a lot of people, we're so excited and we just want him to win. But we forget that he's on a machine that, as good as the whole package is and as good as he is, it's not quite the same as the Ducati. And I've said it, you've said it, his skill-wise, he's as good as anybody else there. But when your bike is that, and we know the margins are so slim, is that little bit off. He's riding a little bit more. So by the time, and Brad said it in the interview, by the time he got to the front, he thought he'd pull a gap. But that first lap when he gave it gas, he suddenly knew that he was through the good part of the tire. And he realized, now, is that because he's been fighting so hard to be with the 2 best riders in the world at the moment? There was no one behind him of any consequence, Bezzecchi was coming, but very slowly. He wasn't going to catch them. So he certainly was, I think, the combination of KTM and their package didn't do Brad justice on Sunday. That's my opinion. I think that was the limiting factor. I thought his passes were clinical, to the point, decisive, not aggressive. When he's going to pass you, he shows a wheel, and then suddenly at a different part of the track where you're not expecting it, he's carrying 10 k's an hour faster into the turn. He's up the inside and he's gone, clean as a whistle. So I think that's his riding style. I think it served him very well, and maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. I think it's the bike that was the limiting factor on Sunday.
I think it was, but it was also the fact, as you said, that the Ducati is still that step ahead. The stability under braking from Pecco and Martin was so impressive. You could see Brad had 1 or 2 head shakes. It's definitely more loose. I've spoken about it a couple of times, and when I saw Simon Crafar at Silverstone, I spoke to him about it, and we had a good conversation about it, and he actually liked the way that I described it, and I think he's used it even. He said, the KTM goes super motard style. So Brad goes sideways and it flicks, and then he eventually corrects it and puts it in. Whereas that Ducati just seems to float. They jam the brakes, it goes up, but it like floats, and then it corrects itself. And I've watched it from the side of the track. That Ducati just corrects itself. They've got the electronics, or Danny spoke about this device that keeps the rear down somehow, that they're going to try and investigate or whatever. But that Ducati just corrects itself a lot better. And even when Martin got underneath Brad and Brad was leaning on him, Brad was going out of, and you could almost, I was kind of watching him, like I could feel the chatter watching him going into the turn. My head was going with the front end, and Martin was just, that Ducati was just more planted. So listen, the proof is in the pudding, and the fact that there were, again, however many Ducatis fighting at the front, 3 inside the top 4, and the next KTM was, Jack Miller, Paul Sparger, and Augusto Fernandez, third, second, and first and last, basically. So that when you dissect it like that, and you look where Brad is and where the rest are, then you have to say, and Jack will be the first one. My comment to the guy that put that post up about the preferential treatment for Brad is, my comment was, I'm pretty sure if you said that to Jack would be the first guy to slap you in the face and say, don't be stupid. Brad is just a machete at the moment. He's been with the package longer. His team know him. And I think that's the difference. Tex, Mark, all the guys, that team just know him. They put that package together the way Brad likes it. I don't think they go miles away from a base setup that they seem to have found on this carbon chassis that seems to be working. Brad knows what he wants, and Brad works throughout the whole weekend setting it up for Friday. The big improvement that KTM have found this year is that Brad's setting up process on a Friday and Saturday is a lot faster and a lot closer to the front, which gives him a better qualifying, which makes the race day Sunday, a little bit easier to manage, as we've seen lately. But take nothing away from Brad. Brad was riding, I don't want to say riding the hardest out of the 3, but Brad was putting more on the line out of the 3, because, as you said, the package was a 2% less than those Ducatis, which forces Brad to ride harder. Take nothing away from Martin and Pecco, please. I came out of watching that race, I can't get any more respect for any of these riders, but I came out of that race mind blown by the fact that Pecco and Martin could race the way they did with so much on the line. But I was impressed with Brad. I was impressed with KTM. Again, they had a great weekend from the Friday to the Sunday. As you said, that little bit's missing, but it's still very early days on that carbon chassis. And if this new, I'm a little bit worried about this new super engine that could be coming next year, because the engine's the heart and soul of a motorcycle. And if it, you can have the greatest aero and whatever. If you don't get that foundation working, then the rest, and I don't want them to, they don't need to make leaps anymore, if you know what I mean. They need to make fine tunings, and I don't want them to try and make a leap and then the fine tunings go out the window and they confuse themselves. So keep going the way you are. Brad's just going to get better and better and better. Stephen Berry mentioned it earlier. Some other person, again, I won't use Jake Dixon words, some other person rated Brad as the 5th best rider in the Thailand race. How you can call yourself a professional when you, or a pundit or a respected journalist, when you watch that race and rate Brad, but take the Brad Binder, forget we're South African, forget anything. You watch that race and rate Brad Binder as 5th. Yes.
So who did he rate as 3rd and 4th? Because clearly he put Jorge and Pecco as 1st and 2nd.
Marc Marquez and Fabio Quartararo.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yes. Anyway, listen. Your final thoughts on Brad before we move on. And KT.
Yeah, super impressed with him. Which I don't want to say we must keep saying how impressed we are. He's top tier. He's the 5th best rider according to somebody else at the race this weekend. Jokes aside, he was absolutely superb. And whoever made the comment, I can't remember, you mentioned who it was, saying that They mustn't just develop the bike towards Brad and not worry about Jack. Yeah, I'm going to partly disagree once again. And please don't think I dislike Jack. I don't know him from a bar of soap. Everyone I know who knows the guy says he's fantastic. What a great person. But me as an avid spectator and follower, I'm critiquing him on his riding. And I'm saying that, have a look at him. What was he on Sunday? 14 seconds behind Brad. To me, of course, you've got to put all your development into Brad. I looked, Jackie's 106 points for the year behind Brad. That's a huge amount. So I do think KTM, yes, take Jack's input, pull the knowledge that you're gaining, but make sure that Brad is the guy who makes the final call, because he's the one delivering the results. And as I said last week, Jack's had more than enough time to give us some good results, even if he had had a few fourths, fifths, sixths, but he's not getting those results. So I'm not saying discard his input. His input at the beginning of the year, I think, was fantastic, because in the preseason testing and the first couple of races and him doing so well, KTM have taken a big step. Whether it's because of the guys he brought from Ducati and his input, I presume that's got something to do with it. We know the carbon chassis has been an advantage, but I'm going to say, and maybe in 5 years' time, it's the wrong decision. But right now, put all your eggs in the Brad Binder basket, because out of the 4 riders you've got on KTM's, stroke gas, you've only got one guy with a possibility of winning the World Championship. And it's not this year, we know that. But 100% next year, Brad's going to be, at worst, top 3. And I don't think Jack's going to be top 3. I think at best, Jack's going to be 6 to 10. So I'm going to say, put your eggs in that basket. Pull the info, listen to everyone, but make sure Brad is the person who has the final say in the direction you go.
Well, thanks, Paul, for getting rid of all of our Australian fans.
How to win friends and influence people.
They already hate us because of the rugby, and now you've just gone and kicked them in the teeth.
When they start beating us, maybe we'll give them some more credit. No, I joke. I'm sorry, I'm joking.
No, listen, we'll get to Jack later, because it is a talking point. It really is. I'm just going to catch up on a couple of comments. Stephen Berry, I love your comment about Phillip Island with the tires many years ago, where Mark Marquez got disqualified, where everyone had to come in and do a tire swap. And he missed it by 1 lap. So tires have been come into play before. Mickey Teal, thank you so much for joining us, and your grandson Liam Townsend. Always love to give them a shout out. Michael Volesler says, at this rate, championships are going to be decided by lawyers and courts. Oh, I really hope it doesn't go that way.
Absolutely.
I want the final race of the year to finish as it did in Thailand. And what Pecco and Martin, I think, are very worried about, and this can actually go back to little co-media, his comment is, you're going to have a Brad Binder thrown in there. Now, Brad Binder is a fighter. He's had to fight to get to where he is now. The whole background, we're not going to go into the whole story. But one thing he is respectful. And I think in that situation as well, I would also want to be riding a guy saying, listen, go for the win, but don't do anything stupid. Me and Pecco are going for a world championship here. And the last thing Brad wanted to do was take one of them out, or both. Well, both of them out would have been okay, because there's no one wins, no one loses. But imagine if Brad took a Martin out or something, that, and everything that comes with that, it would have just been I don't want to swear because we've got Liam Townsend here, but it would have been a black cloud of hate. So Brad has got to think about that as well. Going into the final race as well, it's going to be hard for Brad to commit, or anyone. And I've got it as a talking point here for Pecco, is, to me, he's got a little bit more support in his corner, because he's got Marini and Bezzecchi, VR46 Academy riders on Ducatis, on the same machinery. If it comes down to that Valencia last couple of laps and Bezzecchi, I don't really think Marini will be in the fight, but Bezzecchi's there. Bezzecchi could very well be in the fight, or even now in Sepang or wherever. Does Bezzecchi now go? He's going to go out and try and win, of course. But if it's a situation where it's right, I can really help out my buddy here, Pecco Bagnaia. Pecco's got that advantage of him. Jorge's got probably a Lacia Spargo who would help him. But these are all the kinds of things that you've got to take in. And I just think that, yes, I want to see hard racing and I want to see guys shoving it on the inside, but at the same time, I don't want to see a championship won because a Brad Binder took Martin out or a Leish took a Pecco Bagnaia out. So it's easy to say, yeah, no, let's just go old school wise and, kind of Loris Caparossi on Tetsuya Harada, which was disgraceful. I don't know that ever, but, I don't want to see that. I want to see exactly what played out on Sunday in Thailand is the best situation of how the championship could end in Valencia for me.
Someone mentioned earlier that there's too much buddy in the paddock, and so that can be a problem, but it can also be a good thing in that there's the buddy, but there's a lot of respect. Yeah. So I think Brad, we know, is not going to do anything stupid. If he happened to lose the front and take a Pecco or a Jorge Martin out, it will purely be a racing incident. Remember, these are also human beings, so there are relationships involved. And the fact that Pecco has VR46, and absolutely no doubt, in the last race of the year, if a Marini, Bezzecchi can assist legally, so block Jorge Martin, if they get the opportunity, I have absolutely no doubt they're going to do that if the championship's on the line. As to taking someone out, I don't believe we'd see that. I think it would be more like a professional foul where slower into the corner, run wide, drift the guy, put the wheel on the inside to force him a little bit wide and cost him 2 or 3 tenths every lap till Pecco can catch up or Pecco's got a gap. That's what racing's about. Those are the relationships they've built over time. Whether it comes to fruition or not, I don't know. At the moment, it's almost a non-entity because Jorge Martin is on such a wicket at the moment that he just doesn't seem to be able to do anything wrong. As fast as Pecco was, I do agree with you, the point you made. He definitely saw Brad run onto the green, so he knew second was his place because he still had to pass Brad to get to Martin. Just on that point, on the TV coverage, we didn't see it. They only showed it on the replay. And I was like, what the hell? But then when they showed the replay, I think it was from Pecco's bike. Yeah, clearly he made the error. But yeah, I think those relationships will come into play. I hope in a fair way. I hope there isn't any Rossi Marquez from 6 years ago, or, I hope there's none of those real literal kicking each other off the bike or trying to issues. I don't think it will happen. But yeah, time will tell. But certainly Pecco's got the upper hand in terms of teammates in other teams.
Stephen Berry bringing in don't want it to end up like the top rack World Superbike race on Sunday at Jerez, which was just, if you don't watch World Superbikes, that was as good as MotoGP was. World Superbikes was just as good at Jerez, the final round on Sunday. I'm going to do a talking MotoGP talking World Superbike pre-recorded from the season and the testing that just happened. That'll go out, so to keep a lookout for that. Brenda Boehm asks, why can't riders team choose their own tire supplier? So Brenda, very easy. Michelin are the official tire supplier. They pay huge money to have that right, and it is a one make tire series that was brought in a very, very long time ago. To Rion, Rob, will a rider drop the bike when he has a fast lap 2 minutes to go? Oh, I don't know what that's about. Sorry, Rion, friend. I'm trying to
Probably
catch up.
about qualifying. Remember we discussed it couple of weeks ago when Alex Marquez crashed after he just got through to Q2, and then you stop anyone else doing a fast lap. In short, I'm going to say no.
No, I agree with you. No, but again, just like the tire pressure rule and all, for every action there's a reaction. So you bring in all these rules. I can promise you now, the Gigi Delineas, the whoever's are going to sit down and try and find ways around it. Yeah, as Steve said earlier about Rassi Erasmus. It's sometimes, in modern day sport, it's the man that can bend the rules the best is
absolutely
most of the time. Okay, I'm miles behind in the comments, so I'll catch up a little bit more. Let's go. I got such a fright just now. I got the results here on my phone, and I had scrolled to see where Jack was, and he finished 17 seconds behind Brad. So then when I looked at my results again to talk about the fourth place guy, I saw Taka Nakagami, and geez, I nearly fell off my chair.
He improved.
Jeez, Taka, did you finish fourth? I didn't even know that. But anyway, Marco Bezzecchi finished fourth. Not much to say about Bezzecchi. Shoulder injury, still recovering. Brilliant ride. Staying with the VR46 team. Consistent. Great rider. I'm really enjoying Marco Bezzecchi, and I think he's going to go from strength to strength. Right behind him, Fabio Quartararo in fifth and Marc Marquez in sixth, renewing their battle at Thailand that they had a couple of years ago. Good ride from Fabio Quartararo. Take nothing away from him. Fifth place, brilliant. The Yamaha, we've said it, it's even worse off than the Honda is. Fabio had to make passes. He showed great pace throughout the whole weekend, but the sprint race went horribly wrong because he got into a situation where he couldn't pass. And I also think it is a little bit of a mental issue for Fabio Quartararo. I think there is a mental block. I think if he finds himself in a situation he doesn't like, he switches off. I was watching the episodes of There Can Only Be One, which was last year's documentary that came out at the beginning of this year on the final rounds of the championship. Obviously, Fabio going up against Pecco. And I watched his documentary before that where he won the World Championship. And there was this different Fabio. Yes, the situation was different. He was on a more competitive package and an end. But even last year's one, he says, I know my bike's slower and I know that. And for a couple of races, I let that play on me. But then I just forgot about it and I rode the bike as hard as I could and I didn't let it fuss me. And then, he had some really good performances. He won some races and an end. Yes, the goalposts have moved, I know. But it just seems like he is holding on to this, my bike's cock. So if it's cock and I'm in the situation, there's nothing I can do. And then when he finds himself in situations like this where he goes, ooh, the leaders are there, okay, this is not too bad. Then he can finish the 5th and the 3rd as we saw in Indonesia and stuff. So I do think, yes, the Yamaha package is crap, but I also think there's a mentality of Fabio that, okay, I'm going to go or I can't go. Or I do think it's, like a 70-30 or 60-40 split even to Fabio.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. He's shown it time and again. And Sunday was a good example. He had a reasonable start, something he hasn't had many of this season. And then he gets into a very good rhythm, nice flowing track, except for maybe 2 tight corners. And off he went. I mean, him and Mark had a fantastic race. And I think Mark is a little bit in the same predicament or the same mindset as Fabio. One weekend he tells us he's not going to put it all on the line. He's just going to cruise. Then he has a great sprint race. And on the main race on Sunday, you see the Marc Marquez of old where he's putting moves on everybody and it looks like he's pushing the bike. I still agree. Both the bikes are rubbish compared with the Ducatis, KTMs, and maybe to a lesser degree the Aprilias. But certainly this weekend past, both those riders had a different outlook. They looked happier. They were on it. Mark in the sprint race was brilliant. Then on Sunday, he made many overtakes. He got in a few people's way, but he fights back. He doesn't just give up the place. He had some great passes with Aleix. I'm not saying that suddenly he's ruining his decision to leave Honda. There's no doubt he's not. Because then, like I say all the time, don't worry about the number 1 rider. Look where the next Honda is. Look where the next Yamaha. Look where the next KTM is. And on the weekend, Fabio and Mark were streets ahead. So they definitely, in their minds this weekend, they were there to race. And they brought it on. And it was very exciting and nice to see. We want to see these guys all racing at the front. We don't just want to see the 2 Ducatis and Brad Binder. As much as we want Brad to win, and we want to see good racing. So, yeah, I think it was nice to see them up there. And it shows their bikes, at times, they can be very competitive.
They can. And one of the topics that I've got of discussion is, yes, it was brilliant racing at the front, and there were some good performances by Marc Marquez and Fabio Quartararo. But at the other end of the spectrum, there were riders in no man's land again, which we'll get to as we go down. And it's becoming a concern. And you've spoken about Nakagami for a while and others. But as we go down the list, there are riders that, you just forgot were even there on the weekend. So, yeah, Fabio, we all know the worries there. Marc Marquez, a comment here that I like, Christopher Robertson. Mark is getting race sharp and mentally strong for that Ducati. And he is. He's it's exactly what he's doing. He's riding with a bit more freedom now, mental freedom, knowing that, right, my career is going to be back on track next year. It was a track. Listen, I've never really thought of the Thailand track as one of my favorites on the calendar. After this weekend, watching them stop in that turn 3 and that last corner, it's actually a beautiful motorcycle racetrack, and it actually always produced brilliant motorcycle racing and lots of incidents.
When they showed the highlights from years past, you saw that we actually forget how good the racing is. Seems like every time they go there. So absolutely a spot on decision there.
And I mean, Moto. We'll touch upon Moto 3 and Moto 2 later on, but I mean, Moto 3 was just, insanely good as well.
I hope everyone picked a number before the start, like I said last week.
You do. You've got to put your hand in a hat and just see what number you get.
I'm telling you.
Stephen Berry, thank you for being our correspondent in the side there. I just love having Stephen Berry there because all the questions and comments I can't get to, he jumps straight in. So I love that. Joe Alves, everyone liked this video. We're not going to say another word until you hit the like button and the share button and do whatever. No, I'm just joking. We will talk, but please hit that like button. Marc Marquez, there's now talk, well, it's been confirmed that he will be testing the Ducati at the Valencia test, that Tuesday test. There's now talk that they might upgrade him to a later spec Ducati, which, you know, at the beginning he was just going to get whatever bike was lying around or spare, pretty much DJ Antonio's kind of deal. Now there's talk of, you know, potentially getting a better package, and so this whole thing just seems to be getting bigger. What I want to talk about quickly on Marc Marquez and Honda is Miguel Oliveira came out ahead of the weekend saying, well, it's pretty much done with me and Honda. I wanted a 3-year deal. I want security. I want to be there for the project. They want to give me a 1-year deal. It's pathetic. My question is, why would Honda, who needs stability and need a project to go, why would you be offering a rider a 1-year contract, first of all? Second of all, they're keeping Digi dangling a little bit. You know, Digi Antonio's got no real other choice. He's got to wait for them to pull the plug. To accept him. But now they're talking to Marini all of a sudden, or they have spoken to Marini, and so they're definitely exploring options and keeping the carrot there for DJ Antonio. But I thought about that 1-year thing a little bit more. And is there something behind the scenes here with Mark or another rider? Something where, right, we need a rider for 1 year. We just need a. Why wouldn't you sign Oliveira's 3-year deal? Why wouldn't you go for Oliveira's 3-year deal if you want to improve your package and you've targeted Oliveira as your man? I don't understand this 1 year. And the only reasoning that I can come up with is that they've got a plan A, and that is we need a rider for 1 year. In 2025, then either Mark's coming back with all his Ducati knowledge and everything, or they've got a Maverick Vinales potentially available, or there's some other plan here that we don't know, that Honda are only offering this 1-year deal.
So there were two stories doing the rounds on the internet. The one was that there's this secret pact with Marc Marquez that he's going to do 1 year on the Ducati, and as long as he sees big improvements in the Honda, end of next year, so going into 2025, he's going back to Honda. Exactly what you say. Whether he's doing it to gain the Ducati knowledge or pull staff or whatever, I don't think that was ever his intention. His intention is to win a world championship again. But maybe now Honda are listening to what he's been saying for the last 2.5 seasons. Make improvements and I'm happy to stay. So that's the one story that was going around, was that, is there this pact going on? So whether or not that's true, we've also heard the rumor that has he signed a pre-contract contract with KTM. So I don't know. I think that's definitely one of the stories going on with Honda. Where they're thinking behind signing Oliveira on a 1-year deal, I think they're also waiting till the end of next year, because then I think everyone except Brad is available. Mm-hmm. So sign Oliveira and he has a Pole Espargaro type year as his first year on the Honda. And now they're going to put up with him for another 2 years, possibly. Where if they keep him on a 1-year deal, they would have given him an option maybe to say, if you do well enough, these are the contract clauses, you stay with us. But 2025, everyone bar Brad Binder is available. So their shopping basket, their bank balance will be quite strong if they're not paying Mark next year. I think that's the other side of their thinking is, we're going to have a lot of options, regardless of what our bike does. But if the bikes improve next year, we're going to hook Mark back on. The next question is how they're going to do that. Well, if they signed Digi and Antonio, which, let's be quite honest, is probably the only option they have left. Mm-hmm. Is he going to move the bike forward? Yeah, I like the guy. He's good. He's improving, but he certainly doesn't have Oliveira's experience. Mm-hmm. So Honda are going to be almost caught in a no man's land where they didn't get the experienced rider to help them, and they need to move forward to get Mark back. Now they get the G and Antonio, and they're not getting to where they need to be. So Mark's going to say, no, but I like the Duke. I'm going to stay here. Catch-22 for them. But those were the two stories. One, that he'll have a ride in 2025 if the bike improves, or all riders are available. we'll have the pick of the litter at that point.
I just, Repsol Honda, it's Mick Doohan, it's Mark Marquez, it's Jorge Lorenzo, it's Danny
Casey
Pedrosa,
Stoner.
it's Casey Stoner, Fabio Di Gianantonio. No disrespect, but he's not the pedigree of what Repsol Honda is.
Absolutely.
So,
But we know the reason why, Rob.
no.
They have no choice. The guys that they're chasing are turning them down. It's not a case of, I believe Oliveira said no because of contract issues, not because Aprilia have stopped the ride. They offer the ride to Zarco the day after he wins his first Grand Prix, and he says, no, I understand Cecchinello's involved. But he's also looking at a long-term thing. Zarco, he's saying, I got a 2-year deal. You want to give me a 1-year deal? Then at the end of 1 year, I'm out. LCR signed someone who might give them the 2 or 3 year deal. So catch 22 for Honda. I certainly don't believe they've got A-list riders. And once again, I like the Gianantonio, but he certainly is not a Repsol Honda A-spec rider. I think if he does take the ride, Jean Mere's going to show him up next year. And Mere hasn't exactly set Repsol Honda on fire this year.
No, he hasn't. Listen, that's we could do a talking MotoGP HRC for days and days and days. There's so much surrounding that. So let's wait and see. The latest coming out of this past weekend is that they have been in contact with Luca Marini. I don't know why they would want to do that anyway.
Exactly.
He's not one that I would get. But anyway, Andre Calvert, love this comment from Andre Calvert. It's on my notepad here, and we'll might as well just quickly mention it. Alvaro Bautista crowned World Superbike champion at Jerez this weekend. Backed up his World Superbike championship 2 in a row, dominant win, fantastic. Let's not forget he will be a wild card next time out at the Sepang MotoGP race. So this is I'm a huge Alvaro Bautista fan. Everyone knows it. I'm excited to see what he can do because it's good timing for him. He's got the confidence of being World Superbike champion. He understands the Ducati. He's had 2 test days at Misano on the Ducati, and he's going to a track that he loves. It's another pawn on the chessboard for factory Ducati, which is really good. So anyway, that's just a note to bring in there that Andre Calvert has mentioned there. Looking at the results, let's just quickly go through the rest of them. Luca Marini, good start to the race, just dropped down to 7th. Yeah, not much to say there about him. Decent weekend. Consistency starting to come back, a little bit of pace starting to come back for Luca Marini. He's kind of just been out of it. I don't want to say a grid filler, but he just hasn't set the world alight this year. He's just been that slow, steady kind of guy that's there or not there. And he was there this weekend, but yeah, I want a little bit more from Marini. I've said it a couple of times this year. To me, there needs to be more from Luca Marini. The big talking point, Paul, Aleix Espargaro in 8th. Now, we know he got the 3-second penalty for the tire pressure. But big news or comments, you could say, that came out of the race weekend is Aprilia and their, overheating issues. Maverick Vinales pulled in saying he couldn't focus anymore. He just literally couldn't focus anymore. The bike gets so hot, he couldn't focus anymore. Aleix Espargaro saying he was going to pass out. He thought he was going to pass out. He managed to just dig deep and finish the race. Ralph Fernandez had a good start running inside the top 10, and he dropped off, and he just said he just couldn't breathe. I saw videos of him on the RNF page today of coming in the pits, literally just plonking down in the pits and then throwing water all over him. And we've all seen the picture on I don't know if everyone has, but there was a picture going around on social media of Aprilia with this like little hose that goes to the rider to try and give them air. Now, this is a big problem for Aprilia. Oliveira's bike blowing up and giving him more trouble. Razlan literally coming out and apologizing to the Portuguese fans on social media saying, listen, we know we're not, supplying your guy what he needs to get the job done, and we're sorry about that. But it's just a mess for Aprilia at the moment. This overheating problem is a big look. It's amplified at a track like Thailand where there's a lot of heat, but that's got to be horrible in a race, getting that hot that you literally want to pass out. Now, just a comment here. It just shows the Maverick Vinales mental strength status to me. Yes, listen, if you don't feel safe, pull in. But, if the Ralph Fernandez and the Aleix Espargaros and to me, a Jorge Martin, as he did in Indonesia, and a Brad Binder, they will all dig deep and somehow drag that bike across the line. A Maverick Vinales just pulls in. And this is the problem that we'll always have with Maverick Vinales, is I just don't think this is strong enough. We know this is good enough and he's fast enough, but this is just not good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going back to your original point before we discuss Maverick, what has changed with Aprilia that all of a sudden they're having these reliability problems, overheating problems? What have they changed? Have they changed anything? It can't just be the weather conditions, because that applies to everybody. So I don't know what their problem is. They've made some changes that clearly have not been publicized, or no one's picked up on it. They must have, because suddenly it's, we could understand if it was only Maverick or if it was only Aleix. But their reliability issues the last couple of weekends, they just have been nowhere. And they're having these overheating problems. So something that someone like Simon Crayfall will note what's changed and hopefully be able to tell us what's going on. Going back to Maverick, I've always said it about him. On his day, which, his last great day, I think, happened the last time he won on a Yamaha. He's had some good rides on the Aprilia, surprisingly. But I've always said I compared him to Luca Cadalora. Cadalora, back in the day, on his day, no one could touch him. But he only had one or two of those days a season. And I'm talking racing against the Mick Doohans and the Rainies and Schwanzers, maybe a little bit after them. But certainly in his day, when he was on it, I'm talking the MotoGP, not on the 250. He was very consistent on the 250, on the 500. And Maverick seems to be, is it a thing he's a little bit fragile in his mind? And as you say, Rob, the speed, there's absolutely no doubt. Most sessions now, Friday morning, Friday afternoon, fastest or definitely top three, Maverick Vinales. What happens to him on race day? Does the pressure get to him? I can't believe it's a fitness issue, because these guys are professional athletes. We've seen what they look like. They rip like township dogs. There's no, they're as fit as can be. I don't know what it is. Maverick has had this problem. I mean, he gave up at Yamaha. He was good at Suzuki, but he was never great. I don't know what it is. He certainly, his ability is, he's one of the fastest in the world, but he just can't string it together for 27 or 25 laps, whatever it is, come Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it's the Maverick Vinales question mark that just continues. It'll just be a question mark for a long time, I think.
Sorry, on that point, Rob, remember he walked out of his Moto3 team, eh?
Yeah,
halfway through the race. So it's not a thing that it's now. And when was that? That must be a good 8, 9, 10 seasons ago. So then you could say, he's a youngster and the pressure and. Now he's in his late 20s. He's an adult. He's been doing this for probably at least a third, maybe half his life as a professional motorcycle racer. So you would think that the mentality would be right. But I don't know what it is. So that just jumped into my mind that he walked out of a team years ago. So the fragility is definitely there.
Yeah, it is. Con asks a question quickly. Do we think Marc Marquez can win the championship next year? He doesn't think so, because it's getting used to a new team and everything. And Con, I agree exactly with what you're saying. And I think, Paul, you do as well. I don't think Marc will win the championship next year. If he did go and win it, I wouldn't, be completely surprised. But I think Marc's going to be ridiculously competitive next year. I think he's going to be on the podium more often than not. I think he's going to have some race wins thrown in there, but there's also going to be the Marc Marquez in the gravel that's going to stop him from winning the championship, I believe.
Yeah, he always said with the Honda in his good years, he'd always crash either Friday morning, Friday afternoon. He said he was trying to find the limit of the bike. And then once he found the limit on the Honda, which was a package he knew inside and out, he very rarely crashed on the Sunday, very seldom. Where now with the Ducati, brand new package, brand new everything, how long is it going to take him to find the limit? How many crashes is it going to take? Because that was kind of his yardstick. Okay, now I've lost the front. I know exactly what that point is. He's got to a point where the injuries are starting to take their toll. He doesn't want any injuries. So a valid point there. I think I don't know if he'll win the championship. I've said I think he'll win a race by Mugello. I think once we've had the 2 tests, we'll have a very clear indication. But I also know, don't read anything into that, because I've seen Paul Espargaro on a Repsol Honda finish a test in 3rd place. So I'm not going to read too much into it, but certainly it will give us a guideline. Yeah, and it's just so competitive now. I don't think anybody, doesn't matter what bike you're on, you jump on a bike, never having ridden it before, and can go out and win a championship. I think it's got too competitive, too difficult, too everything. All the riders are now just so competitive, and the racing is so close.
Stephen concurs with you with the 1-year deal for Honda because almost all the contracts are ending, so it gives them a bigger choice. Willem Kruger says, yeah, maybe Honda's pulling Moto2 riders. Jaco Das says, Fabio to Honda if Yamaha progress is too slow. So, yeah, these are all factors that can get thrown in. I thought about the Moto2 thing on the weekend, and I thought, could Honda make a bold move and go for Fermin Aldeguer in Moto2 destroyed the field. He's really come on strong. He was this massive talent, last year and the year before when he's 16, and then he qualified pole position the one race and finished third, and then every MotoGP team wanted him, and then I think that pressure, as we've seen before, maybe just hit him a bit, and his performance has kind of downturned from there, and he's kind of picked it up again. And I started thinking, Yamaha took a huge gamble with Fabio Quartararo. Fabio was the next Marc Marquez. Went in Moto3, had a great first season, won races, and then kind of fizzled out, went into Moto2, yes, won 1 or 2 races, but was never fantastic. He was never a Brad Binder or Oliveira or a Pecco Bagnaia or a Martin or anything. But Yamaha, back then, Petronas, Yamaha and Razlan took a gamble on him, and he turned into a MotoGP world champion. So I did kind of think, does Honda go to a Fermin Aldeguer? He's a tall guy, Fermin Aldeguer. He's one of the tallest guys in the paddock. Do they go to him and say, right, he's only 18 now, I think.
18.
There's a guy that you go, right, we're going to sign you to a 5-year deal with an option to terminate you after 2 seasons or something if it's not working out for both parties or whatever. But, and hope you get the same kind of result that Fabio did with Yamaha. So anyway, those kind of things, as I said, you could have a whole show just dedicated to the HRC situation. But that was one thing that did cross my mind, as it did there for Willem, and I'm sure a couple of other people there. Just catching up with some comments here. Stephen's doing a great job keeping everyone there. We're going to talk
Why are you looking at comments there, Rob? We've discussed this in the past. Honda need to look at young blood.
Yep.
I've said it all the time. It would be good for them for 1 season to have Oliveira. But like I said last week, then they're only chasing next week's result and next week's result. They need to look a little bit more ahead right now. So I think Aldeguer would be a great option. I like him. He's fast, can be a bit inconsistent, but, as we've said, you can't make a slow rider fast, but you can teach a fast rider how to be more consistent. So I just think that should be their way forward. That's why I thought the Gian Antonio, not a bad option because he's young. But is he the best rider? I think he's the best they've got right now because he's got some MotoGP experience. But a guy like Fermin Aldeguer, take him, nurture him, exactly what you say. Give him a long-term deal and say, first year or two, don't worry about results. Let's get this thing in the right direction.
And Stephen Berry has had the same thought process. As I scrolled down, he said, shout out to Fermin for beating Acosta. And he did. I mean, he thrashed Acosta fair and square. Yeah. David Alonso in Moto3 if I was Honda, I'd be breaking the bank to sign that kid right now. The problem is KTM have got him.
And I said Colin Vaya, same story. Why haven't Honda scooped him already? But he's on a Husky, so that means KTM have got their claws in him. So they doing what the other manufacturers should be doing. By they, I mean KTM, whether it's a gas or a Husky, it's the same family, and they making sure they looking after those youngsters.
Okay, looking further down, 8th place was Aleix Espargaro after his penalty. DJ Antonio in 9th and Zarco in 10th. So that just shows you how cutthroat MotoGP is. 1 week, 1 week, 7 days or 6 days or whatever from Zarco finally picking up his win, top step of the podium, top of the world. DJ Antonio, 3rd place, brilliant ride, the best we've ever seen of DJ Antonio. Bleh. Thailand. Bleh. And I was worried, and I still said in last week's show with Zarco, I've seen this play out with some riders where they finally get that win and it's almost like, and then they almost lose that little bit of spark to keep going and keep going. That's the difference between some riders and champions. You talk about rugby, for the box to win the World Cup again. That's a good thing for Alvaro Bautista to back up his to go back to back and to do things again and again, that makes a true champion. To have that focus, that determination to just keep going when you've already got it. There's my trophy. I look at it every day, but I want more. I want more. I want more. And I don't know. I personally feel, I don't know if Zarco is that rider. I think it's almost like, right, target achieved. Job done for me.
I'm with you 100%. And besides Phillip Island last weekend, we had discussed him and said, what's happened to this guy? He's suddenly, where he used to be consistently top 4, 5, 6 runner, he was running 10 to 15th. And then last weekend he wins, and we thought, well, maybe he's turned the corner. But I agree fully with what you're saying. He's ticked that box. And unlike, which I mentioned last week, Petrucci, who wanted more of that, and I'm not saying Zarco doesn't. He clearly wants to win more. But how badly does he want to win more? And suddenly we see a result on a track where he should have been good. We saw how the Ducati just worked. He should have been way better than what he shouldn't have been behind Quartararo and Marc Marquez. To be quite honest, every Ducati should have been ahead of those two. No disrespect to them. They're world champions. They're the best of the best. But their package doesn't allow them. And yet they seem to be fighting a lot harder than some of the guys on better, possibly better equipment.
Yeah, so just behind them, Franco Morbidelli, we can talk about him. One of the better rides from him, 11th place, 11 seconds behind, but he's kind of one of these floaters that we talk about, and I hate that word because they're not. But yeah, Joan Mir, one of his better rides in 12th place, 11 seconds off that. Yes, he wasn't anywhere near the fight, but 12th place, only 11.
And he finished, Rob. He struggled to finish races, eh?
And then I spoke earlier about riders that just got lost and are just in no man's land for me. Enea Bastianini was one of them in 13th. Yes, I know there's still this recovery in a factory team or whatever, but this is not working. And straight out of the weekend now, I don't know if you saw it, Jorge Martin to factory Ducati. Bastianini to and I think a couple of reasons for this, because factory Ducati are going, well, if we lose to Martin, which is a possibility, we still want the number 1 plate. Right. Put Martin on our back. We got the number 1 plate. Yay. And right, we're going to be in the situation next year again. We'd rather have our 2, factory boys. So it's going to us no matter what, fighting for it, rather than this independent team, because in a way, it's a little bit of cake in the face. Yes, it's still on your Ducati badged motorcycle and a factory supported bike, but you can't have a Pramac bike beating your factory team. It just doesn't work like that. But Enea Bastianini, I've said it time and time again this year, he's not a factory Ducati character. I think I don't want to say bullied in that team, but he's not strong enough to carry the weight of factory Ducati. He thrives in a Gresini environment. He'll thrive more in a Pramac environment for me. And I wonder if that conversation has happened where Enea's just going to say, you know what, guys, Martin's the better rider. Or they've come to him and said, listen, we snubbed Martin and he's kicking dirt in our face now. So some conversations happened where this Martin to factory Ducati from next year already, is going to happen. And I think it potentially is going to happen. And for Bastianini's sake, I hope it does, because I think he'll be better suited in that Pramac team.
Well, Rob, I'm going back to your Johan Zarco tick the box story. Was it not a big relief to Bastianini? He got the factory Ducati ride. That was his dream. Box ticked. The fact that he got injured immediately plays against him, but that's okay for him. He got the factory ride, So what you said about Zarco, the exact same psychological event could have taken place with Bastianini when he signed that contract. And I did read that article, and if I was Bastianini, I'd be incredibly worried, because the Oku he snubbed, as you say, is now I'm going to say the hands-on favorite to win the championship. If not, he's going to finish second. Bastianini at the moment, I think he's 15th, 16th, 17th. I don't even know. My computer doesn't go that far down the list. So, I think a valid point, and I agree with you. He was so good in the non-factory team last year. 3 wins. He just looked like a champion. He didn't win every single race, but he was way more competitive. This year, he just seems like he's out of his depth. It's almost as if he's doing something that he doesn't know what he's doing. And I mean, he's a Grand Prix winner. So I agree with you. I think the pressure, the whole Ducati thing just got to him, and it's really put him under the spotlight. And I'd be very surprised if he keeps his ride for next year.
Stephen Berry says it's the same. Bastianini's in the same boat as Dad's. Injuries, long time off the bike. It's playing catch up with laps and time on the bike and understanding. People say, oh, but he was on a Ducati last year. He was on an older spec Ducati last year, and this new bike. You look at the beginning of the year where Martin struggled a little bit, and then all of a sudden they found a setup and it clicked with this new 23 Ducati. Bastianini hasn't had that period, so I understand that. I just look at it now and I go, when I look at his debriefs, and certainly when I've seen him at like Silverstone and some of the other races that are Portimao at the beginning of the year, yes, that's where the crash happened, but his demeanor just doesn't look like he's a happy character. He's a happy camper, and an unhappy rider is not a fast rider, or is not as fast as they can be. There's no such thing as slow riders in the MotoGP anymore. It doesn't exist. Yeah. So I think it'll be the best move for him. Steve Engelbrecht says, careful, Tom Curry's watching. We're saying can't and cunt too many times. Just the undercunt. Okay. Ons moet dit reg sê.
Unfortunately, Brad went on the green kant. So
I did. I did.
Yeah.
Looking after that, as we said, just riders that just seem lost. Taka Nakagami,
yeah.
Raul Fernandez in 15th. We've spoken about his troubles, the overheating. This is the big talking point. 16, 17, 18. Jack Miller, 17.6 seconds off. Now, I'm still going to go with my comment that I put on Facebook a couple of months ago, where I said, you know what, back off Jack. He's already brought so much to the project. Let's not judge him now. Next year is when I'm going to be very critical of Jack. For this year, let him go. Having said that, as you said, results and performances speak more for themselves. Actions are louder than words. And while Jack is the best professional, what he did at Phillip Island when that race was cancelled, and he jumped over pit wall and he went to those fans and was fantastic. And then Pecco came and Marini. What I saw from those three riders, I was so massively impressed with that. That they were like, bugger this, these guys have come. But that's the side of Jack that we don't have an issue with. I don't know. Jack will always be fantastic, but I can't argue with a guy like you that says, I don't know if I'm Barso, but I'm judging him on his performances, on his championship position, and I can't argue with that. My only argument could be, listen, just wait, just hang on. Yes, Brad's shining and Jack's struggling. Just hang on. There's a talent there. But having said that, Jack had these flash in the pan performances at Ducati. 2 or 3 races he would go and you would think, right, this is the Jack now. This is the Jack. He's going for the title. He's on the podium. And then he would go through these slumps. And he did it at Pramac. And, we all know that he rushed the process from Moto3 to MotoGP. Was there that little in between, that little filling in the cake that he doesn't have, that the other guys got from Moto2 and that? Andre Calvert says, yeah, I think Jack is tired, baby fever. And Jack has had a lot going on this year. It's been a big move, married, baby. There's a lot going on, but I understand you. We can't keep making excuses for Jack.
Because he's not the first rider who's got married and had a baby and. He's on a factory bike. He was on the factory Ducati last year. Not a Pramac, not a VR46, the factory bike. And he finished 1 point ahead of Brad Binder. And no disrespect to Brad. Brad was on a bike that was 10% worse as a package than the Ducati.
Yeah.
And Jack on that bike he had 2 2022 Ducatis ahead of him in the championship. So and as I say, I don't know him. The people who know him say he's the most fantastic guy. I could think of nothing better than sitting down and having a couple of beers with the guy. He must be fantastic. But I'm critiquing him on his ability. He was okay at Pramac. He had his moments of brilliance, no doubt. He's superb as a rider, but he just isn't consistent enough. And I don't think he'll ever be championship material. And I don't believe he gets to a point where he becomes stagnant. And he can't, whatever it is, I don't think he's going to improve the KTM. He helped at the beginning. I think now they've sorted that out. He got the carbon chassis, so did Brad. Brad immediately took a step forward. Jack almost looks like he's taken a step back. So that's my point, and I hope people don't think I'm a know-all and I'm criticizing him. I'm criticizing what I see on the track.
Mm.
And the same with Bastianini, the same with Maverick Vinales. Probably all fantastic guys, but they in teams where their number one rider is drilling them. So let's look at that. Jack has been around a long time. It's not his first rodeo. And I've got to a point where, and that's why everyone talks about him, because he's such a nice guy. He's so popular. He's so well liked. He's really a great character.
Mm.
So they take the riding out of the equation. They don't want to say, listen, Jack, I think you need to pick your game up, because he's a nice guy. But if you don't know him and you look at it as a racing result, you'd say, why is this like on the factory bike?
And Andre Calvert also says, yeah, Jack does lack Moto2 experience, because even a fast Jack can't make a tire last, and you can't argue with that. And the biggest thing that I can see from the start of the year to now is obviously Jack was fast at the beginning of the year on the KTM. He was able to run the soft tire at like Portimao and some of the other tracks because it was Europe and those kind of races. We must also remember the Pecos and the Martins were still getting comfortable in 2023. So while they've, as you said, evolved, and Brad and everyone's evolved, Jack's kind of made that, and he's got a bit stagnant. My concern with Jack is that he doesn't seem to be able to make a medium or a hard tire work as well as others. He needs that soft tire. He needs more of a feel, a hard and a medium tire, certainly the harder compound tires that you get these days in MotoGP, where Brad seems to get the best out of it. Brad almost prefers that rigidity, that lack of feel in a way. It's just, it's there or it's there. Jack likes to have a bit more movement, and a soft tire brings that. And, there is something missing with Jack Miller. And like you said, it's the conversation's always kind of sugar-coated because, but he's a nice guy and he's selling t-shirts, and he does. He sells t-shirts, he sells caps, he's the fan favorite, and that's what's keeping him really in the championship. We all said, how could Ducati get rid of him? And then you start looking at the results and championships and performances, because the Jack wins and the podiums always stand out. Those are, he's a nice guy. And those are always the first things that pop into your mind. But the bad stuff, you don't tend to look at as much as you should. And I'm still going to stick by my argument of next year I'm going to critique more. Next year is going to be a massive year for Jack Miller, because he's got a Pedro Acosta coming that is going to take his seat. Unless he goes out and does a Brad Binder season and can be competitive and put in the top 4 in the championship, Pedro Acosta's lined up to take his seat. But then where does he go? If KTM don't renew his contract and Jack has another 8th, 9th, 10th, or wherever he is in the championship season, where does he go? Russell Bird, to your point, Rob, the steel frame KTM may have suited Jack better than a stiff carbon frame. Yeah, exactly. The carbon frame, I think, is also very rigid. Bang, 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 and that's why Brad's kind of adjusted to it more. So there's a lot of factors here. But I want Jack to work out next year. I will.
But on that point, Rob, if it's the chassis that's the issue, they would let him run the steel chassis. If he said to them, that to me is better, and look at my results, they'd say to him, it's fine. That unless they've said we're only going with the carbon chassis and that's our way forward. I don't think they think like that. Honda, Yamaha, yes, they would say Mark likes X, we're going Mark's way. Fabio likes Y, we're going Fabio's way. KTM, I think, are going to say, Jack, we're trying to help you. What do you want? And if he's saying, I prefer this or I prefer, I'm sure they're going to look after him. But I don't think that's the issue. I think Jack might be, I think he's got to as good as he's going to be. That's my opinion. He's regressed going to KTM. There's no doubt. But that's not unexpected. But I thought he would have gone from 5th in the championship to 7th or 8th. And I always knew Brad was going to beat him, but I didn't think it would be such a big margin. So that's my opinion. I don't think it's too much the equipment Jack's got. I think it's Jack that can't decide what he wants.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there with the chassis. I think KTM was saying a carbon frame is the way we're going forward. You are a factory rider. You're going to help us develop this thing. We're not going to give you the easy way out and put that. That's old. Those are going to be binned for next year. We're not going to produce any more of those. We're going to throw those. Those are going into the KTM hall. So I think Jack's forced to. You've got to make this work. And his biggest problem is is that he's got a teammate who's making it work and is now casting all these doubts over Jack because his teammate's doing so well. And that's what happened on the Jack Miller fan group. All these doubts are being casted like, well, okay, you get the odd silly comment like this guy made, Brad preferential treatment. But a lot of the Jack Miller diehard fans came on there and said, no, ridiculous, don't be stupid. Brad's doing a phenomenal job. But then the concerns came of, okay, well, why is Brad able to do that and Jack's not? Is there, is not, I don't want to say his time up, but, is it curtains?
Okay, but then look at Danny. So let's just presume Danny rode the carbon chassis. Well, we know he raced the carbon chassis. He beat them both. So they know that's the way forward. If Jack can't adapt, that's Jack's problem. So now next year, Pedro Acosta is going to walk in, and I can tell you right now, he's going to drill Jack Miller. He's going to walk in there. He's never ridden a steel chassis. He's going to climb on that bike and say, okay, this is what I have to race. Here we go.
He's climbing.
That's my opinion. He's going to be the youngest ever Moto2 World Championship champion. He's taking that away from Marc Marquez. He's going to jump on the MotoGP bike, and if the carbon is the way they're going, it's all he's going to know. That will be his base. So he'll only get better on that. Brad's already adapting to that. Whether Brad likes it or not, I hope at some stage you're going to have him on here and he's going to tell us, or he's allowed to tell us. He might not be allowed to, and say it was a big difference or not so much or whatever it is. But he's certainly making us believe that carbon chassis was almost a revelation in improving that KTM. So, Jack needs to, if he has to adapt, he needs to adapt. And Robbie's got 3 races this year left to do it. And next year he's under pressure because Pedro Acosta is going to be on, I'm going to say he's going to be on exactly the same equipment.
Yeah, listen, Pedro Acosta's coming in and he'll only know the best version of a KTM. Pedro's coming in the best time ever in KTM. He doesn't have to deal with all that Brad's had to deal with and Miguel before him and Jack and everything. So I agree. I think Pedro is going to be absolutely fantastic. I think he's going to throw it into the weeds a couple of times, but I think there's going to be days where he's really just going to shine, and he's going to be Brad's biggest challenge in that.
Just remember, back in the mid 2000s, there was a young Australian called Casey Stoner, rode a LCR Honda, and I think the first 8 Grand Prix, he spent their budget, boy. That bike was cartwheeling more than anything else. And look how that turned out. So, the fact that these youngsters come into a MotoGP category and need to learn, they only know how to learn at one speed, and that's flat out. So, it's turned to the stops and off they go. So it's going to be interesting, but I think Jack's under immense pressure because this youngster's coming into the same team. He's going to have the same equipment. And it's going to put a lot more pressure on Jack if the pressure is the problem. If we keep saying baby, marriage, blah, 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 he's got bigger worries next year.
Willem says, maybe Jack testing all the bits in race room for Brad when Danny can't. And I think they are trying a lot more than Brad is. I said earlier in the show, I think Brad's fine-tunes his package now. Whenever I read Jack's debriefs or see Jack, they go up, they go down, they go left, they go right, they go. So I think they still in this unknown. They haven't found the package that Jack likes. And like you said, that's not KTM's problem. That's Jack's problem. Jack's not being.
He was exactly the same at Ducati. He was exactly the same. There were many weekends where it's like we don't know what our base setting is, where the other Ducati riders were not changing too much from weekend to weekend, where he was exactly what you're saying, go left, go right, go up, go down. Then you lost. Then you don't know what actually works.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of comments here saying that Jack could potentially be in this 3rd KTM team in 2025. The only way there's going to be another KTM team is if a satellite team, an independent team, a Pramac or someone buys or leases KTMs. We spoke about it last week. So the only possibility of that happening is an IO coming in as an independent team and they are leasing bikes from KTM. KTM cannot come in with their own 3rd team. It's got to be an independent team. As BL46 do, they lease Ducatis. As Gresini Ducati do, they lease Ducatis. So they need that kind of environment, that kind of situation to get more KTMs on the grid. Andrew Rosafiere, sorry, Andrew, I'm probably saying your surname terribly. Rob, do not discount Augusto Fernandez next year. Now, I've been impressed by Augusto Fernandez this year, I must be honest. He was 17th in this Grand Prix, 21.3 seconds behind the winner, which is basically Brad was 0.1 behind. So he's 21 seconds behind Brad. I worry about the consistency of Augusto. I worry about if there's guys with the supreme talent, which I think Pedro Acosta's got, the Brads, the Pecos, and then there's the very talented riders. I think Augusto fits into the very talented. I don't think he's a supreme talent. I think he's going to be under a lot of pressure, as we were talking about Jack, of this Pedro Acosta coming in first season and outshining him. Augusto, yes, he won the Moto2 title, but was he any better than a Remy Gardner or a Raul Fernandez? I don't know. I've been impressed by certain times with Augusto Fernandez, but I have with Di Antonio. But then they put rides like this in where 17th, 21 seconds. Okay, you beat his teammate Paul Espargaro, hip hooray. But Augusto has this really good performance, a semi-decent performance, but more often than not, it's this. Yes, it's still his first year and he's a rookie, and I know he's understanding it, but I don't know. I don't know. If Augusto lost his ride this year, I would have been like, oh damn, I wouldn't have lost sleep. And I don't know. I can see Augusto maybe not sticking it out in MotoGP, as harsh as it is.
Yeah, but just give him credit. He is going to win the Rookie of the Year competition.
Yeah.
He's done that already. So
he started it up after Portimao.
Yeah. I don't know if he got points there. Yeah. Listen, I agree with you. I think he was fortuitous to win the Moto2 World Championship, but don't take anything away from him. He won it. He also hasn't quite adapted to. I agree with you. You get the great riders and then the very talented riders, and he's certainly one of those. You don't become a world champion in any level of motorbike racing without being outstandingly good. But that level, that step up, some guys they never make it. And he'll have a fifth and a fourth and a one or two good results, a la Johann Zarco possibly. Maybe not even to that level, but I do agree with you. And where he's going to go, if he keeps his ride at the end of this year, next year, where he'll go after that, I don't know. I can't see him making a big jump up next year. As you say, he's on the same equipment as Brad. He's 21 seconds. That's just shy of a second a lap in this race that we've just had, which is, at that level, that's a huge margin, so a difficult one for him.
It is. It's a big conversation to have. Paul Espargaro, we know the struggles there. Alex Marquez, I worry about him as well. Went with a medium rear tire, looked good. It was never going to work out, but he was right up there. But then Alex still makes his mistakes. So listen, Alex Marquez, we can talk about all that as well. My concern, and I know we got a lot of Portuguese fans here, so I want to just talk about it a little bit before we finish off with Moto3 and Moto2 and Darren, is Miguel Oliveira. We've spoken about it early on in the show, but Miguel looks like a defeated person at the moment. He's had, obviously, the bad luck with being taken out and the injuries. That video that I saw of Razlan apologizing today to the Portuguese, there's been some conversation had where Oliveira's gripped Razlan and said, listen, this is not what I signed up for. And I think for a split second, Oliveira saw an escape plan with Honda, and now that's come crashing down, and then his bike blows up. Now, I just think the world's on top of Miguel Oliveira at the moment. His second child was born or is being born soon, so there's that added pressure. But Miguel's situation is not good for me. RNF situation, I can't see him improving next year. If anything, it'll get worse. RNF are looking like amateurs. Stephen Berry, it's harsh to say because I've made so many good relationships with the guys last year. And Razlan was so accommodating in many ways, although they just make these stupid mistakes, and it's just not a well-run team. And I might get some flack for saying that, but it's just not a well-run operation. The Raul Fernandez exercise has been a massive flop. Miguel, the Miguel thing's been a complete flop, but that's more from the team side. And at the beginning of the year, I said it's fantastic. Miguel's on an Aprilia, great, yay. But I worry about the team giving him what he needs, and they aren't, and I don't think they can. And I think Aprilia need to step in more. if they're going to kind of salvage this Aprilia Oliveira relationship.
Yeah, Rob, and I don't think anyone can have anything to say about your comments because you've been there. You know, you've got first-hand knowledge, inside knowledge of how that team is run. So you speak in, I speak a lot of what I say is what I read, what I see. I don't have inside info. You've got that. So I agree with you. That team is definitely struggling. And you would think it wouldn't because they've got a Jürgen van der Gerberg who was a racer of many years and a qualified guy. And such a knowledgeable guy. You would think that he would be able to kind of get everything to gel. Money, obviously, we heard from one of our colleagues last week saying that it looks like they're struggling financially. And as we discussed, they were expecting the good results from Oliveira. And I must say, when I heard he was jumping on the Aprilia, I thought, well, Elias, you got your hands full. This oak's going to give you a proper hiding. And it hasn't quite worked out. We know why. He's been injured through no fault of his own. But that's part of bike racing. But now that income stream, which we thought, and I'm presuming they would have expected, hasn't happened. And now they've got other issues with the bikes. Now the bikes are now getting to the end of their lifespan. Or Aprilia, who does the internal investigations into what's happening with Aprilia? Surely the factory feed that info to Reslin's team. They must be doing it, but they just seem to, Aprilia just generally seem to be in a dark hole at the moment. And it's not helping Oliveira. What you said about him and the Honda deal falling through, that was his shining light. And that was actually the train coming out the tunnel. And that's what it feels like to the poor guy. And it's very sad to see because, I mean, what did he win on the KTM? 5 races? Okay, 3 or 4 of them in the wet. But take nothing away from him. A win's a win. When now, where he should have been winning or fighting top 5, top 6, he's struggling at the back when he does manage to finish. So very disappointing for him. I mean, and just on that point, I would have, for that reason only, it would have been good to see him on the Honda to get him out of that slump because he's certainly one of the top guys. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, a couple of people commenting that he must be ruining the decision to leave KTM and that nest that is KTM with Red Bull sponsorship, KTM money. It's a solid foundation. But credit to Miguel, he gave all that up to. He said he was in a comfort zone there. He didn't feel like he needed to take. He was sitting on his comfy couch. So he took this big decision. It has kicked him in the teeth. There's no doubt about it. But the team needs to be looked at. Wilco Zeelenberg is the guy that kind of manages with Razlan.
Sorry, not Van der Gerberg. Yeah, sorry.
That's a demerit there for you, Paul. But I saw cracks last year. Like I said, we were going to every race and they were, no, Darren, don't worry. We're talking, you're going to kind of solidifying that he'll be there next year, giving him this false impression. And then at the last second, pulling the rug under his feet. So it's not a well-run organization. And you can see it with where Miguel and Raul is. So yeah, I just hope things can turn around for Miguel because he's also a genuinely great guy, nice guy. Got a massive following. He's got great commercial value to him. There's a massive talent there. It just hasn't been managed the way it needs to be. Paul, let's move on to Moto3. As we said at the top of the show, you kind of put your hand in a hat, pick out a number, and it's a lucky draw. But having said that, there are standouts now, week in, week out. Alonso, Rookie of the Year. I actually wanted to bring up the post how many wins in that. I mean, it's incredible when you come in and Marquez stops you to give you a half.
Absolutely.
That kid's got something. There's a big talent there. Colin Vire really, really impressed me of late. Massia, we know how strong Massia will probably go win this World Championship, and credit to him. My argument with Massia is he was in Red Bull Rookies with Jorge Martin.
Yeah, and he's still in Moto3.
So yes, great talent, winning races, but is he going to jump into Moto2 and do what De La Porta did? Kind of got lost, and some other Moto3 champions. Guevara, I think he's certainly not a Pedro Acosta or a Brad Binder or a Pecco Bagnaia or Jorge Martin, is what I'm trying to say. Whereas I think Alonso, Colin Vire, those kids are looking really, really good.
Yeah, and Furusawa, the Japanese rider, also had a great ride. I think they said he's 17 or 18 years old, first podium. So 2 of the top 3 first podiums, because Colin Vire, it was his first podium. And I mean, up until the riders crossed the checkered line, you didn't know who was going to win. It was absolutely fantastic. I'll say it again, if the guys haven't been watching, just pick a number. When they're on the grid, take anyone from position 1 to probably top 15 or 18. Just if you don't support someone, pull a number out of one of those guys and watch them. It was fantastic because at one point, with about 5 laps to go, there was a split of 5 of them. Only about a just under 1 second gap. But then these 5 started racing so hard with each other that the group of 10 caught up, and suddenly we're back to 14 or 15 who could potentially win the race. So absolutely fantastic. It really is good racing. It's, that's bar bashing, hard racing, but and they're all youngsters. They just give it everything they've got.
Stefano Neppa is another name that's there. I was impressed with Holgado because he got caught up in that incident with what's his name, Sasaki, and they crashed and he ran off the track. He came back and it was a brilliant ride. Kept himself a little bit of a glimmer of hope in the championship, but after his dismal, what was it, Indonesia, where he just made the dumbest decisions ever, came out there and I was impressed with him.
Unfortunate incident for Sasaki, eh? I mean, he was lucky that he didn't get hurt. Looked like I can't remember who it was. Looked like he missed a gear or they had a gearbox problem.
Munoz, right? David Munoz.
Munoz, in the middle of the pack. Gee, was unreal, eh?
Moto2, we've spoken about Fermin Aldeguer. I was very impressed with him. Phillip Island, he was dominant in Phillip Island, except for the weather that came and interrupted that on Sunday. Picked up the win at Silverstone this year. There's certainly something to that kid. There's no doubt about it. And I think it's management as well, because what I saw certainly last year when all the MotoGP talk, and I don't think he was managed right as a youngster. There was a lot of pressure, a lot of talk, and Yamaha went and did talk to him, and I think it all got to him, and that's where the results went. So I think, it's so vital, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. I remember Trevor Binder telling me the first thing they need is to get Brad a good manager, because Trevor could never be his manager. Trevor's too hot-headed, and as a parent, you'll make the wrong decisions. And one thing Sheridan Moraes said to me is the worst decision he ever made was not getting a proper manager like Brad's got, Bob Moore, to make those decisions. More often than not, Shez would make decisions on, geez, this is not a great ride, but if I don't take it, I might not get something else. Okay, I'll take it. Takes his cuck rides. We're on cuck bikes with cuck teams, or I don't want to say cuck. I shouldn't say cuck. With teams that are, that are taking the money.
Top-tier teams.
Yeah, not top-tier teams. So you can't really go and show your performance. And I think that's happened with Aldeguer and a lot of riders that just need that better management. So yeah, I was very impressed with him. Pedro Acosta, second place. I don't think he had an answer for Fermin Aldeguer, but just moves on to Malaysia now, where he's going to be crowned the world champion. Yeah. He's been phenomenal this year. Take nothing away from him. Darren, watching Darren the whole weekend, they struggled. They couldn't find a setup. The team and him, they couldn't find a setup. The little bit of TV coverage he did get, just he looked uncomfortable. He just didn't look comfortable. Starting 25th on the grid, and even in the practices and that, I was waiting for his name to climb up, and
exactly,
and it didn't. So it just wasn't there this weekend for Darren. It was a little bit disappointing up till the race, to be honest, from Darren. To finish 15th, making the best out of a tough weekend. More laps under the belt, more Moto2 experience, more Dunlop experience is what he needs. We talk about Nairo Bashanini. He just needs that time. He needs those laps, and he is still playing the catch-up game. And I'm glad he could put that 15th together in the race, because I thought, she's 25th. If this guy finishes 20th or something, you're going to get those haters that are going to go, 15th, a decent salvage job.
And watching the timing sheets, because we didn't get to see a lot of Darren, or I don't think we saw anything of him in the race itself. So you're watching the scroll bar on the left of the screen, and it didn't look like from 25th to 15th, it's not that riders were crashing and he was making up a place. It looked like he was literally making up a place a lap. So a good credit to him, not a great weekend at all to qualify. And when I watched their qualifying session and you don't see his name and they're showing the top 15, you're like, has he had a crash? Because we don't see everything. But I think credit to him. He'll be disappointed, there's no doubt. But again, as we've said many times, Rob, Darren's not going to win this championship. Just bring the bike home, get the experience. Yeah, we want him to be top 5. I do believe his 5 to 12 material consistently. But on a weekend like this, for whatever reason, they couldn't get it to work. He didn't crash. He brought the bike home. The team are going to be respectful of that. And other people who are watching will say, listen, this kid, he makes it work. He's got something. He doesn't give up. And they like that. So all credit to him. I think in the end, a terrible qualifying and a good race result. If you look at where he qualified, not a great result in 15th, 1 point. He would have wanted top 10. I think top 10 was way out of his reach, or almost anybody starting at 25th. So I think a very good result at the end of the day from a poor weekend in general.
Paul, we're going to end off with karma, which we've spoken about before. And karma certainly bit someone that deserves it again this weekend. Jake Dixon.
Oh, my favorite.
I mean, how pathetic. And I use the word pathetic now because I think it's justified from a guy that went out and said what he said and then has just had this attitude about him. And then he goes and pulls a move like that. And there's been no massive, there's been nothing. It's kind of been, oh, geez, sweep it under the rug. He hasn't come out and taken any kind of responsibility. Yeah, I find the whole Jake Dixon exercise and the management. We spoke about management a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah,
that needs managing because that was pathetic. That's the only word I can really bring up.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's 100% karma, and it keeps. When I saw him crash, I just in my head I'm thinking, 4 or 5 races ago, weren't you telling the world that you've just put away Pedro Acosta and look at me? And that was the week after or 2 weeks after he had his rant at Darren, and in my mind, and I think I'm quite a fair guy, in my mind, Darren and his incident was 100% a racing incident, and I still say it was more his fault than Darren's fault. And he had such a go at Darren, and I understand with Neil Hodgson interviewing him immediately while he's still got his helmet on. Don't do that. But still, he's really got this air about him that he's the bee's knees. And like you say, now he causes a massive crash, takes someone out, they have a big accident, nothing gets said. He doesn't get, nothing happens, and it's swept under the rug, and Jake just carry on doing what Jake does. And it's just not on. But as you say, that's karma, and it's biting him in the bum big time, eh?
Yeah, Stephen Berry says, there's no penalty, and it's probably because Vietti didn't crash in that incident. He crashed or whatever.
Well, the next corner, yeah.
But that to me, that doesn't cut it with me. The guy did a reckless move that endangered another rider. The fact that
was way worse than Brad on Oliveira.
100%. That could have and should have probably ended up a lot worse. The fact that it didn't, thank goodness. But something needs to happen with a move like that. He needs to get a penalty for that. Yes, the other rider didn't crash because of that incident. I don't care. It was reckless riding. Forget it was Dixon and what he said and whatever. Any rider, that is reckless riding at its finest, because that was, I use the word pathetic. Pathetic. It was absolutely pathetic, that move. And the fact that no one's come out and it's been swept under the rug irritates me. That's why I made a note of it to kind of bring it up in the show, because it needs to be put in the public eye that, and someone needs to get that interview about Darren where he called him an idiot, a clown, shouldn't be here, and then I've just beaten this guy, Pedro Acosta, the next moment, and then back it up with that move. Someone needs to play that as a reel and go, right. So how's this? So how does this work? How does this work? Because it's shocking, absolutely shocking to me. Shocking. And when I saw that, I was waiting for, sorry, Paul, I was waiting for after the race for a Dixon to be man enough to come up and go, you know what, guys, bring up the incidents. Let's, be man enough to bring up the incidents. You know what? I did. I went out and I said these things about Darren Binder, and I've gone and done this. It's not good. I massively apologize, and I've got to change my ways. I've got to do things differently. I've got to look at myself and do things differently. That's what a real man would do. That's what a Springbok rugby player would do. That's what a New Zealand rugby player, some of them would do. A lot of people have blown up the whole South African New Zealand thing with their own personal opinions. But I loved the pictures on the field of the guys hugging each other. The one rugby New Zealand guy showing the South African, his kids, introducing him to his kids. That's what men do. Jake Dixon doesn't do it for me.
But Robbie just seems to, and I mean, once again, we're speaking from what we see on television pictures. His arrogance just seems to have, I'm going to say, got out of control. He's had 2 wins this season, and suddenly he's running third in the championship, which is nothing to that's a fantastic result. But don't go about it the way he's going about it. Like we said, his rant at Darren, then his big words after he beat Pedro Acosta, and only just, it's not like he put 25 seconds into Acosta, and nothing since. But his arrogance, he's got that attitude that, no one can touch me and I'm better than everyone. And actually, he's not. And I think that's what's getting up our nostrils, and the fact that he picked on Darren. And he's very lucky that Darren didn't walk into his pit and slap him with a Arai helmet or a Shui helmet across the face, So, but, that's not what Darren would do. That's not what Brad would do. They're respectful, and they'll deal with issues, and they all get cross when things happen, but they don't rush out and say the idiot talk that comes off the top of their head. So I think that's put a lot of us against him, but I think rightfully so, because he's acting like, we've got a good South African saying, he's been a real chop.
Yeah, he is. Andre Calvert says that he does. He blames the MotoGP comment, and Neil Hodgson did handle that whole situation badly. And this is what I talk about management. Neil Hodgson should have, even if he was doing that interview, he should have realized where it was going and probably said, cut. You know what, Jake, stop there. Let's, you're obviously, you're emotional and everything. Let's not go any further. Bad management. And this is what bad management does. So, yeah, I think management of some kind needs to get a hold of Jake Dixon and salvage that, because for me now it's lost. He can miraculously go win a MotoGP World Championship in the next couple of years. He won't be getting my support. And
I respect is gone.
Yeah, I don't say that a lot about. I respect every single rider there, because I know he's, and I know the hot stories, and I know Dixon. I wanted the Dixon exercise to work. I loved him in BSB, but all these stories come out of how he was actually in BSB, and he's done himself no favors. Anyway, Dixon is one of probably the few riders that I can say that no, it doesn't do it for me, and he won't be getting my support anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm with you on that 100%.
And Paul, that's where we're going to end it. It's been a great show. It's Halloween. I didn't go trick-or-treating with my kids because I had the show on. So I've got to go downstairs, and I've got to do the dishes, wash the washing. So I've got to go make up for
the ironing, Rob.
The ironing, and I've got to go do some makeup time with the kids and the wife. But it's been a great show. Thank you so much, Paul, once again, for all your inside information. Stephen Berry, Sven Gruden, even though you tuned in late. Andre Calvert, you've put in some great comments in, Nicole Briet, everyone, as always. It's an open discussion. It's great. Remember, this is on our YouTube channel, Facebook page as well, and I will be putting the voice only, the audio only up on Spotify. I'll hopefully have that up tomorrow, and I'll put that link out. So if anyone's fan, if you were late and you just want to put it in your earbuds while you're at work or driving somewhere, you can now do that. You don't have to watch the YouTube channel. So Paul, again, thank you so much, and thank you to each and every person for once again supporting us.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Rob. It was really enjoyable. Once again, look forward to our next race in a couple of weeks' time, and good night to everyone in South Africa.
That's it. Goodbye, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and until next time, see you later.